So there it goes.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, Katrina's
Okay.
doing it.
All right. It is really, as Clive said, it's great to see so many people here today and so many people I haven't seen in far too long. So it just makes me think I really need to see each other in person again soon. So I'm so pleased to be honoring Clive today. He's been a friend and a colleague for many years now. I became a companion of the Guild just at the same time, right around the same time that Clive became master. And as you all know, during his tenure, he transformed the Guild into an international, collaborative, thriving organization. And it was really thrilling to be part of the Guild's growth, which is now ongoing under Rachel's guidance. Clive's generosity, his knowledge, his enthusiasm were and are exemplary, and I'm so grateful for the opportunities that he gave me. I've learned so much from him over the years, and I'm thankful for his support and his friendship. He has forwarded Ruskin's work in unprecedented ways, and he's enriched Ruskin studies immeasurably. And we're very honored to be honoring him today. So I want to turn over now to our tribute speakers, and thank you all for being here.
Again, welcome to everybody. It's Jim again. Our tribute speakers, our first speaker tonight is going to be Howard Hull. Howard is the curator of Brantwood, Ruskin's home in the beautiful Lake District of England. And he's got a few words to say about Clive. So Howard, if you're there and ready to go, let's begin with you.
Thank you, Jim. And I want to just first start by congratulating the Ruskin Society of North America for making this award, and in particular making this award to Clive. I can't think of anybody who deserves it better, honestly. It's a wonderful tribute and a really appropriate tribute for Clive. I mean, the beauty of Clive is that he is both somebody who combines incredibly warm friendship with wonderful learning and generosity of spirit. And I've known Clive both as a friend and as a Ruskin colleague, and in both measures, as it were. I found him sort of to enrich my life hugely. I've had the great advantage of traveling with Clive. Many of us have, I think. And you'll see here a picture of us enjoying a feast in Venice in recent times. One of the things about Clive is that a very large number of important meetings with Clive seem to take place over food, and Venice is a pretty good place for that. But I think that the really enduring experience that I had of Clive when I really got to know him was when he and I undertook something which we called the Ruskin Journey, where we journeyed in Ruskin's footsteps across northern Italy. And we were combining looking at Ruskin in the past and looking at Ruskin today. We went to contemporary examples of architecture and of the development of, say, places like Turin, the Fiat factory, at the same time as going to hunt out some of the places that Ruskin had written about. And Clive has a wonderful way of asking questions. I think all of us have been experienced this, because Clive is a tutor, he's a teacher, and he has a wonderful manner about him of provoking your thought and then questioning your thoughts. And from that, you learn an enormous amount. And of course, Clive wears his Ruskin scholarship so lightly that you would barely know the depth of his knowledge and until you encounter it. But one of the things I think that informs Clive's take on Ruskin is that Clive himself is a poet, and an important poet, a wonderful poet. And Clive's love of poetry, his love of words, his love of the spirit of humanity in the voice and in the poetry is something that he also sees so beautifully in Ruskin. I remember very vividly standing with Clive on the banks of the river in Verona, with Clive reading an extended passage of Ruskin. And actually, I can still hear him saying it. His voice, as he read it, brought it to life in a way that actually just reading it on the page never had before. Photograph you see here, we're going to hear more about Venice, I'm sure, from others, but was when the wreath was raised on the Calcina, where Ruskin used to stay, over the plaque that marks Ruskin's importance to Venice. And there you have one of Clive's magnificent hats. Actually, this is a hat that echoes another love of Ruskin's, of Clive's, and that is his love of the poet Ezra Pound, who was also a poet and artist much associated with Venice. Clive is also a Cambridge man, and I've been lucky enough to go to Cambridge and stay with Clive, and also to stay in his college, to attend evensong in the college chapel there with him, and to visit friends, mutual friends like Leda Kindersley and Graham Bell in Cambridge. It's a very important part of Clive's life, I think, both professionally, but also in a sense spiritually. And walking around Kettle's Yard with him on a relatively recent visit, just actually pre-COVID, to Cambridge, just made me feel how strongly Cambridge, in all its facets, suits Clive. Anyway, he's far too big a subject for me to condense. He's far too important a friend for me to find the really appropriate words to say what I feel about him. But I am really delighted that he's got this award. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Very lovely. I will point out, looking at the screen right now, the Pensione Calcina is in fact where Ruskin stayed in the late 1870s when he lived in Venice essentially for the last time, lived in Venice for a long time. The plaque right above his head is dedicated to Ruskin, indicating that this building is a place where John Ruskin lived for quite a period of time. It's a beautiful place. If you've not been to Venice, you must go to the Pensione Calcina. They know of Ruskin there, they know of us there, and you can have a lovely meal there as well. Thank you, Howard, so much for what you've just shared with us about Clive. Our second tribute tonight is coming from someone who is well known, I think, to all of us who are online today. Stuart Eagles is a deeply committed Ruskinian. He cannot be with us today in person, but he has recorded a tribute to Clive in audio, which I think Katrina, who's our tech maven in LA, will play for us now. Katrina, are you ready to play Stu's recording?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a go. There seems to be some holdup on the audio.
Can you not hear the audio?
I can't hear a thing.
Oh my. Can you hear the audio now?
Heartfelt congratulations,
yes,
Clive, on this very well-deserved recognition of your immense contribution and continuing contribution to the world of Ruskin. And I'm very sorry that I can't be there with you today, but I hope that my audio message is accompanied by some of the photographs I've unearthed from the archives. I'm not sure how many years ago it was that we first met and whether you can remember the circumstances, Clive, but you'd given a Ruskin seminar up at Lancaster. Somehow or other, I got myself invited to the post-discussion meal. Very nice it was too. And we both returned to campus in a taxi. I told you on that occasion how much I treasured your edition of Unto This Last and Other Writings. And to quote a famous British television advert from the time or just before, when I pick up a penguin, it's invariably your volume of Ruskin, and I treasure it still. And I think I probably should now turn to refer to you in the third person. I know that my esteemed friends and colleagues will want to talk about Clive's scholarly achievements, whereas I want to focus on what I call applied Ruskin and his contribution there. In particular, Clive's quite brilliant work as Master of the Guild of St. George. as master, he gave me several opportunities to make my own contribution. He'd heard somewhere that I was researching Ruskin's reception in Russia, and mindful that Tolstoy's centenary was then approaching, he asked me to give the Ruskin lecture on Ruskin and Tolstoy in 2010, for which I was immensely grateful. Then he asked me to edit the Guild's magazine, The Companion. Then he asked me to be the Guild's company secretary. And the reason I mention it is not only so that I can make a personal and public thank you for those opportunities, but because I was not alone. During Clive's mastership, he widened the Guild's embrace. He was deliberately and thoughtfully inclusive. In particular, I would say he encouraged a younger generation of Ruskinians to get involved. I was a member of that group once. In the process, he ensured that he could hand the baton on to the next generation. His legacy was a bigger, a broader, a more active, a more visible, and I would say crucially, a more vital organisation, one that was actually fit to apply Ruskin's ideas and values in today's world. And it's not for no reason that Ruskin's personal motto was today. Now, this was achieved in lots of different ways, too numerous to go into now, but some of them were, I would say, intellectual, like the collaborative public symposia, which were held to explore Ruskin's ideas and how they might inform contemporary notions of the economy, of art, of the environment, craftsmanship work, and all many other subjects. Whereas others were more practical in their focus. The big projects to revitalise the Guild's assets in Sheffield, in Bewdley, to a lesser extent in Westmill and Sheepscombe. But crucially, the practical always drove those intellectual inquiries, and those intellectual inquiries and scholarly endeavours, the publications, the symposia and so on, always informed those practical efforts. There was a sort of symbiosis there, a mutually reinforcing relationship, and that very much came from Clive. The projects, the exhibitions, including the John Ruskin Prize, by the way, publications, symposia, there was a dizzying variety of activity. He encouraged that outside the UK as well as within it, and it was all part of Clive's mission to, as he memorably put it himself, to dig deeper. That is, as I understood it, exploring fully the Guild's assets and our collective Ruskinian heritage, and applying those lessons to the challenges we face today. Now, Clive was involved in every level of the organisation. I have to say, he showed prodigious energy and unwavering dedication. And I might add that under the relative tonnage of emails which we used to exchange, his sense of fun and appreciation of humour ensured that even if sometimes with gritted teeth, we kept smiling. But more important than his omnipresence in the Guild, and indeed omniscience, I would say, was his vision and the poet's voice with which he articulated it. I think I'm right in saying that Clive considered himself above all to be the Guild's spokesman, and I think he's the best spokesman the Guild has ever had. What I'm sure we can all agree on is that he did an exemplary job of building on our Ruskinian heritage, and like those Oxford undergraduates at Hinksey, we've been set on a journey. Clive has shown us, to coin a phrase, how to build the new road on which the guild is travelling. What a journey it's been, and what a journey is still to come. Clive, turning direct to you again, thank you and heartfelt congratulations on this well-deserved honour today, and it's a privilege to be involved. Thank you.
Well, we thank Stu, even though not in person. That was a lovely tribute, and so well-deserved, primarily about Clive's work as the master of the guild for the 10 years that he held that position. Really lovely. Our third speaker, our third person offering a tribute, is coming to us from Venice, La Serenissima herself. This is Professor Emma Sdegno, and she's live from Venice. And Emma, are you ready? We'll turn the microphone and the tribute over to you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone, and thank you. And I'm really honored to have been invited to say some words about Clive. During the years that he was master, Clive worked indefatigably, as it has been said, to make the Guild of St. George known and relevant beyond the UK borders. And if we all are connected here online today, I think it's largely thanks to Clive's wonderful work. Connect and share are the words that I soon associate to Clive as master of the Guild of St. George, as well as a Ruskin scholar, a teacher, tutor, and a friend. I have known Clive for very long, probably since the 1990s as a student, but could know him well a few decades later when he spent a semester in Venice as visiting professor at Ca' Foscari University. I still was teaching there. He was appointed by my department to teach in the spring term of 2015. He held an MA course on English poetry and a seminar on John Ruskin. Both were hugely appreciated by students and colleagues. He also took part in 3 poetry readings in the context of a yearly international event called Incroci di Poesia, Crossroads of Poetry. We went on a little tour of poetry reading, twice in Venice and once in Vicenza. I enjoyed translating some of his poems, and his readings, together with those of poets from Spain, Portugal, Greece, Brazil, the United States, were a true success. At the end of March 2015, another event gathered people together. It was a colloquy that we organized at the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, I mean Clive and myself, where the community of San Rocco and of the Guild of St. George met for the first time and presented themselves, introduced themselves, their own aims and projects. The pictures that you can see on screen remind us of that unique moment that has sealed a strong and long-lasting friendship. I take this opportunity, Clive, to address the most heartfelt wishes and congratulations from the Guardiangrando, Franco Posocco, Laura Forlati, and Demetrio Sonaglioni. They all wish you the best and congratulate you. But there is one further way in which Clive kept people together at that time. During his teaching term in Venice, he wrote some e-letters, electronic letters, emails that we call them, to a group of friends in the UK, in the US, and to some locals like myself. I was lucky, very lucky to be on the mailing list. Some of the people that are gathered here must have received them. They were written with some regularity, almost weekly, with Ruskinian regularity, we can say. It was a joy to receive and read them. They conveyed with precise comments and fresh impressions on the city, on Venetian artists, on architecture, on people. Each letter was carefully illustrated, and each had a title a floating city, glory, storm and stress, virgins, syncopation, harmony, and so on. It is impossible not to think of Fors Clavigera, of that address to Ruskin's companions through those letters. There is the same wish to keep together, to embrace a large community, and friendly and authoritatively educate them. As in the Fors letters, sorry, I can't share, but as in the Fors, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, as in the Fors letters, we find thoughts in their germinal form, described with freshness and authenticity, while they take shape, they are taking shape. But the tone has no harshness, no reproach, just the master's wish to share his discoveries of the city and its everyday life. For this occasion, I have gathered Clive's Fors letters in a file. They are 19. I'm trying to see if I can share, but I'm sorry, I can't in this moment, but I can send you if you wish. Once Clive told me that someone had suggested that he should collect them, and I agreed. And this is what I have done to prepare my brief talk for him. I enjoyed rereading the passages and hope he will enjoy finding himself back in Venice again. Thank you very much, Clive, and congratulations again. And thank you to the Ruskin Society for North America for this important award.
And thank you, Emma. Very nice indeed. I'm sorry you couldn't share the images with us, but in any event, we got the gist of it. It was very, very nice. Thank you so much. And one of the things that you're doing is you're bringing out, as have other speakers, the great breadth, I would say, of Clive's Ruskin work. He is involved in Ruskin in all sorts of different ways, administratively, scholarly, and in terms of his orientation of his whole life. And you're bringing that out. So thank you so much for your comments. Such a joy to have you with us today. So now we'll move on to our next speaker, who is Professor Marcus Waithe. Marcus is in Switzerland. I'm sorry, Marcus, I've sort of forgotten the name of the town that you're in, but we're getting, of course, we're getting this international communication today, which is great. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcus for his tribute to Clive.
Thank you. I'm guessing the slides will, yes, great. Thank you. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to thank Clive publicly. And I'm struck by the echoes in some of what I have to say of what others have already said. I first encountered Clive in 1999 on a train traveling from Ilkley Moor to Leeds. I don't mean that I met him physically, but rather in book form, having purchased a copy of his Penguin edited volume, John Ruskin, Under This Last and Other Writings, which Stu mentioned earlier. I'd read some Ruskin before when following up some references, but this was my first fully committed attempt. By the end of that short journey, I could see that Ruskin would become a fixed part of my reading life. As Clive has it in the introduction to his edition, Ruskin was a writer who changed lives. Indeed, I was beginning to wonder whether I shouldn't have applied to Cambridge to work on him for my doctorate. Instead, I had applied to work on William Morris. When the offer letter came through and announced that Clive had agreed to be my supervisor, I was pleasantly surprised. Now it all made sense. The publisher biography in that edition told me that Clive was educated at King's, the same Cambridge college that had offered me a place, and that he shared my interests in modern poetry. I was officially studying Morris with Clive, but through him I was able unofficially to study Ruskin. And since most of what I have to say today concerns Clive's relationship with Ruskin, it's worth dwelling first on all the other things that Clive manages to do and to be. It was another one of those surprises that also makes sense when he told me that his elder sister, the photographer and music journalist Val Wilmer, had hosted eminent African-American jazz musicians in their South London home when he was growing up. Clive is about as English as it's possible to be, but he imparts an openness to America that I suspect begins with this experience of an underappreciated avant-garde, visiting London and finding it a kind of fruitful displacement. The same instinct entered new territories and a new sense of movement through his long-standing friendship with the British Californian poet Tom Gunn. My first slide shows a photograph of Clive launching his Faber and Faber edition of Gunn's selected poems at Cambridge University Library in October 2017. While the Californian sun didn't obviously impinge on our supervisions, I always sensed that Clive's attraction to medievalism, to the Pre-Raphaelites, to a thinker who valued changefulness, if not syncopation, interesting that word has already come up, was rooted in a concern to understand modernity, or perhaps different possible modernities. And this seems an opportune moment to recall that Clive is not solely a scholar, but also a poet of subtle technical ability. Ruskin is never far away in that arena. The opening lines of Clive's poem Bottom's Dream, inspired by the character in A Midsummer Night's Dream, reads, "I was a weaver, and I wove the moody fabric of my dream." These lines gesture towards the manual root or bottom of so much language that we take to be metaphorical or ethereal. Indeed, it strikes me that this dynamic interface between imagination and materiality is at the heart of what Clive sees in Ruskin. He writes about it revealingly in a chapter entitled, "Was Ruskin a Materialist?" And this same moody fabric may explain why he has needed to be a practitioner, in effect, a weaver of words, as well as a critic. Clive is in many ways an historical thinker, but his keen sense of form allows for conversations across time. Supervision with him could take in observations on 16th century poetry, on Dante, on Renaissance painting, and finish up with a discussion of Ezra Pound's economics, with an invigorating sense that they all had things to say to one another. It never seemed as if he was straying from his specialism. Indeed, his specialisms were multiple, quarries that were still open and being worked before my eyes. Apart from sharing knowledge, Clive shared his method as a writer. He re-taught me the valuable lesson that writing is about communication, and that this function needed to be conducted in good faith. In the margin, he occasionally picked me up on bad habits with the simple query, "What does this mean?" I quickly found that I needed to be able to explain not only to him, but also to myself what I meant. One reason that these pointers and prompts carried such authority was that Clive's writing had already taught me, on the way from Ilkley, that the hardest thing to do, indeed the intellectually impressive thing to pull off, is to write clearly. I've known Clive for 23 years now, and so there's much that I would wish to mention that I won't have time for. Stu has spoken eloquently of his highly successful tenure as the Master of the Guild of St. George. I will instead dwell on a more recent collaboration, a contribution to the Cambridge Companion to William Morris that I commissioned from Clive on Morris's relationship with the Thames Valley, the river that is, but also its wider fluvial landscape and cultural patterning. I suggested that we meet to talk through his plans, and inevitably memories of our early supervisions came back to me as we spoke. I think we both sensed that he had singular and distinctive things to say on this topic, that he glimpsed the image of it, even if he couldn't presently settle it into a defined shape. I desperately wanted his chapter in the volume because the volume wouldn't be happening without his early contribution to my education. For me, after all, Clive was the original Cambridge companion in all things Morrisian. But I also sensed that he would be offering something that spoke to Morris less as a subject than as a generous spirit, something that might otherwise be missed. The final submission is rich in these qualities, and I commend it to you warmly. Clive has also been writing new poetry, and indeed will soon publish a work entitled Architecture, a Fragmentary Narrative. It carries a highly Wilmer-esque epigraph from Ruskin. When we build, let us think that we build forever. Architecture in that respect is about commitment. And it seems to me that Clive's poetry strongly evinces the idea that where we place a stone and how we place a stone matters, both technically and ethically. And if we could change slide at this point, thank you. By some curious chance, I was sorting through some old papers while preparing these thoughts, and I came across a letter that Clive wrote to me over 20 years ago on the 26th of May, 2002. A typically thoughtful and humane communication sent at a time when I was struggling with the task of writing my thesis. It reads, "Marcus, a true story for you." Underneath, he includes the text of his poem about Great Coxwell Barn in the Cotswolds, a kind of farmer's cathedral. I can't think of a better way of closing these recollections than by reading this testament to Clive's manner of building, where teaching, writing, and piling up stones are all part of the same continuum. At Great Coxwell Tithe Barn, William Morris said, as noble as a great cathedral, and on the same mighty scale. Arriving there one incandescent afternoon, we saw in the arrow slit just over the main portal a carrion crow alighting. It then flew a dipping flight the length of the dark hall to pass without a feint at hesitation out through the other slit at the far end, the white glare momentarily gone black. Like Bede Sparrow, with a grimmer touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcus. It's so delightful to have you with us. It's really such a tribute to the best of modern technology that we can communicate across all these time zones and different hours in the day in any event. Thank you so very much. Clive the poet, my goodness, what a special thing is another part of his character. I'm going to take a couple minutes now to talk a little bit more about Clive's character. We all know him. We all love him. We all think the most of him as a scholar and as a person who's done so much to further our interest personally and our interest and the interest of so many in Ruskin and the importance of Ruskin in continuing in the modern world. So I want to talk a little bit about character. We all know that character was terribly, terribly important to Ruskin, that the heart and soul of a person, the heart and soul of a poet, the heart and soul of a great administrator were the things that really mattered in human life over a period of time. And I wanted to talk about Clive, two of Clive's characteristics. One particular, Ruskin always said, and he says it in many places in his works, that the keys to human progress are gentleness and kindness. That those are the two qualities that any person who aspires to really move the world forward in any particularly beneficent way would have gentleness and kindness. So I want to talk about 2 or 3 experiences I've had with Clive over the years, and it's now approaching well over 30 years that we've known each other, as I make my remarks. I had begun my study of Ruskin. Oh, this is a great picture, one of my favorites. There's Clive on the left, as you can see, in a hat. Gabriel on the right, also in a hat. I couldn't afford a hat, so I'm in the middle. And of course, it's a lovely picture. This was taken in California. We were at a great art show at the, what am I missing here? At the, well, Gabriel, tell me, where were we here? No, it doesn't matter. Anyway, we were at a great art show, and this picture was taken afterwards. We were having a wonderful time. Clive and I have met in various places. So the first time I met Clive was in Cambridge, and it was in 1989. I was teaching a group of our students in England for a semester, and I was there. And before that had happened, a year or two before, I had taught a course called London in the 19th Century with a colleague by the name of Claudette Columbus. And she is the one who introduced me to Ruskin. She said, this is one of the most important persons who's ever written and lived written in the English language, and you must read him. So we did read Ruskin, and we read John Rosenberg's wonderful collection, which I recommend to everyone because it's still available out there, called The Genius of John Ruskin. I'm a sociologist, and so as I read through, I was particularly attentive to Ruskin's passages, and of course there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens, his comments on society. And I was so taken by them, I thought, well, here's a sociologist who actually does not act like modern sociologists do. Most of modern sociologists like to pretend that they're completely objective and that they don't make judgments about the world. But here was Ruskin making absolutely very clear-cut and forceful judgments about the world. He was saying things like, these things that people are doing are tremendously good for them. We should keep doing them and encourage them. And these things that people are doing are tremendously bad for people. We should get rid of them and not do them anymore. And I was so taken by this. When I went to England to teach the students, that my one reservation about John Rosenberg's collection was that he included 3 of the essays from Unto This Last, but not the 4th one. And I was always feeling a great gap there, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Here's a cover of Clive's Penguin classic book, which you all know. If you don't have it, you should have it. It's a masterpiece of modern editing and commenting on Ruskin. In any event, so I got to England, and I said, I have to hunt up this 4th essay. It was Ad Valorem, the final essay, and it was a longer one. There's this whole story there, which we don't have time for. But in any event, I started haunting some of the bookstores in London, and I got to Waterston's bookstore in Earl's Court, and I said, what have you got by Ruskin? And a fellow took me in the back. He said, well, we just have this relatively new edition of Ruskin's Unto This Last and Other Writings by this Cambridge fellow. So I went and picked it up, John Ruskin Unto This Last and Other Writings, and it's been mentioned before in these comments. And I have to tell you, in all honesty, the book has changed my life so many times. Clive's selection of the pieces of Ruskin on social life are absolutely impeccable. The footnotes are astonishing. They are a masterpiece of scholarship all in themselves. And I loved it, and I have used it as a text. It's right downstairs. I should have brought it up today to show you, but it's right downstairs on my writing desk, and it always is there, and I constantly consult it. There's hardly a page in the entire book that is not annotated from my many readings of it. I've had to have it rebound. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of scholarship, shows Clive at his scholarly best and the Ruskin scholarship at its scholarly best. So I read this 4th essay, and then I read the whole thing through 2 or 3 times, and I said, well, where is this fellow Wilmer? And I found out I don't know how you found people in those days. It was so long ago now. This would have been 1989. I called him up. I said, I'm an American sociologist. I'm here, and I'm much taken by your book on Ruskin. Can I come up to visit you? He said, absolutely, came along. And I took the train up to Cambridge, I believe, the next day. And we met. We had a lovely lunch together. And he said, I want to show you some things in Cambridge. And here we come to one instance of so many of Clive's kindness. And he said, I want to take you around. I'm going to show you all of the wonderful windows that Edward Burne-Jones did here. He was a great, great friend of Ruskin's and a great student of Ruskin. So we spent the rest of the afternoon going around looking at all the wonderful stained glass windows in Cambridge. And I thought, this fellow Wilmer is a very nice fellow. He's certainly gone out of his way to take care of me as coming up to visit him. And he signed my book. And I went back. 2 years later, I was there again doing a lecture, I believe, up in the Lake District. And I said, I'm going to call up Clive. So I called him up, and he said, do you want to come to Cambridge? I said, yes, I'll come to Cambridge. He said, what will we do this time? I said, I don't know. You're the person who lives and works in Cambridge. He says, we're going to go see the Ruskin Turners at the Fitzwilliam. And I said, okay. So we went, and he made reservations because he was capable of doing that as a professor there at the university. And we got into this wonderful room at the Fitzwilliam, and they trotted out about 20 Turner watercolors that had once been Ruskin's, which he had given away because Ruskin never thought that he was the owner of a great piece of art. He was only the caretaker of it for a while. And near the end of his life in particular, he began to ask himself, who will be the caretaker of this piece of work when I am no longer here? And he gave all of these wonderful watercolors to the Fitz. And so we're sitting there surrounded by these on little easels, we're both wearing our white gloves as we're supposed to, and looking at, and I often thought afterwards it was like being surrounded by the wonderful paintings in the anteroom to heaven itself, because Turner was so great to be so close to those wonderful paintings. It was just a terrific revelation for me. Another example of Clive's enduring kindness. And the third one, and in a way the most important one that I want to tell you about, I don't know whether we have an image of it, I certainly hope so. I was back in London a few years later, met Clive for a drink somewhere in, I think in the theater district, and we were having a drink, and I was lamenting to Clive that I felt that my research on Ruskin was hampered a great deal because I just simply could not find anywhere. The internet had just been born and it wasn't too sophisticated yet. That I had not been able ever to find or locate a library edition, certainly one that I could afford. And Clive thought for a moment and he said to me, and this is one of the great generous gifts of Clive's life, at least to me. He said, I think of the letter he wrote Marcus and the poem he sent Marcus. He said, I think I know a place in Cambridge that has a library edition and they're willing to sell it. I said, what? So we got the name of the head librarian in Cambridge. And the next day I was flying out either later that day or the day following. I drove up quick as I possibly could to Cambridge, saw the library edition that was for sale there. I couldn't quite afford it. I certainly didn't have the money with me. And I said, I want this. Excuse me. And they said, absolutely. And so we made a deal and I sent them a check when I got it home. There's a whole story involved with my acquisition of the library edition and getting it home. It wasn't as easy as it might sound like. But in any event, it's one of the great gifts of my life. Katrina, do we have the picture or do we have the image of the library edition? If we do, I'd like to show it, but if not, at least you can. It's 39 volumes, folks. Most of you know that. You've all seen them somewhere. And it's the maroon edition. And I was just so taken and so touched by Clive's generosity in being willing to share this with me. He didn't have to, and he just did as a matter of course. That's the kind of man that we have that we're honoring today by the Ruskin Society of North America. Clive is a great, gentle, and very kindly soul. And it has been to the great benefit of my life. Ruskin changed lives. Well, I'm here to say today, Wilmer changed lives, changed my life in all these good ways by making available to me these wonderful bits of Ruskin. First, his edited book, which you see on the screen, and second, the library edition. I've used the library edition so much I've had to have 4 or 5 volumes of it rebound because it's 120 years old now, and it's still a wonderful thing. Not too many of them out there. Character, Ruskin said. Clive is a character. Ruskin was a character. We can use that in sort of the facetious way it's often used, but I really think of Clive as being exemplary of some of the greatest traits of human character. He's a generous man, he's a kind man, he's a sweet man, and he is a true Ruskin scholar. I have found over the course of my long Ruskin life now, I have found that lots of people can get inspired by this or that in Ruskin. They like the way he writes a paragraph, a phrase, or something really sticks with them and they really like it. But very few people are willing to take the time to understand Ruskin and his genius. Clive Wilmer understands Ruskin and his genius. Clive Wilmer understands why Ruskin is one of the great geniuses that Western civilization has ever brought into life. And we are the recipients of it, we who are here for this tribute today, and we who spend so much of our time thinking about the greatness or the genius, as John Rosenberg called it, the genius of John Ruskin. So Clive, to you, my dear friend, my colleague, and our honoree today, I can't give you enough thanks for all you have done for enhancing my life as I've come along over all these years, for all the times we've met together in other places, in Italy and in England and in other places in California, etc., over the years. You are a great, great human being, and we're all very proud and honored to be able to pay you this tribute today. Thank you for all you've done for us, and may you continue to do it long into the years ahead. And there's our plaque. Sara.
Yes, and Clive, hopefully the plaque will soon be with you. I think there was some hold up in customs or something, but it should be with you shortly. And I did want to add just a quick footnote to something that Marcus said. He mentioned, Clive's love of American music and especially African American music. And I just wanted to, many of you may know this volume of Clive's work. This is Clive's poetry, Urban Pastorals. But on the back of it is a picture. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's Louis Armstrong and there's Clive. This is at London Airport, and there's Clive in the background. And he included this picture on the back of his volume. And I love this picture. And when Marcus mentioned that, it made me think of it. So I ran out and grabbed it to share it with you. So again, thank you all so much for being here. And now we're going to let Clive have a little bit of time to speak. And so I want to turn over to Clive and give him the floor.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm so moved. I don't really quite know what to say. And I just want to thank you all very, very warmly, all of you dear friends, and all of you people who care as much as I do about John Ruskin. I have prepared just a few words, not very many, which don't really meet the occasion, but I couldn't find anything that seemed more appropriate. As all good Ruskinians know, the great man turned down all invitations to visit the United States. Why, he asked, would he want to visit a country that had no castles in it? Well, he was a silly old bugger, really, wasn't he? And speaking for myself, I have to say that, disciple of him though I am, I haven't followed his example, and it was a special delight for me as master of the guild to lecture and travel over there, invited by Ruskinian friends and scholars, several of them here this evening. Moreover, going back to the days of Emerson and Thoreau and Ruskin's friend Charles Eliot Norton, the US has produced many of the really great Ruskinians. Indeed, it is not absurd to say that the Ruskin revival we are happily living through now began with the work of American scholars, with Helen Gilville-Yoon, Van Aken Bird, and mentioned several times already, John Rosenberg. The Ruskin Society of North America has deep roots in the work of those scholars and their students. I should also say, as a former master of the Guild, that I hope American and Canadian Ruskinians will continue to join and support the Guild while pursuing matters nearer to home through your own society. It's worth noting that though Ruskin founded the Guild to help make England a happy place, he was never insular about it. Ruskin's St. George is a Venetian saint as well as an English one. And at one point in Fors Clavigera, Ruskin contemplates a, quote, romantic design of his own, which he calls the Company of Monte Rosa, which was to be an international association within the Guild of St. George. He was probably thinking of France, Switzerland, and Italy, the countries he traveled in every summer, all countries that have provided companions for the Guild in recent years. But with the ease of modern communications, we can now work and share our values with people across the world, with Japanese and Indian companions, say, as well as North American ones. And I like to think of the Ruskin Society of North America as a modern version of Ruskin's Romantic Association. I don't know what you would call it to be appropriately American. But first of all then, on this very special occasion for me, I want to thank the North American Ruskinians, including those who now have their place in what Ruskin calls the Great Concourse of the Dead. More particularly, I want to express my gratitude to you here and now who have paid me this immense honour. I'm thinking first of all of the board of the Ruskin Society of North America, and in particular of my dear friends Sara Atwood, Gabriel Meyer, and Jim Spates. All of them deep Ruskinians. And I want very warmly to thank the other dear friends who've spoken today with kindness, intelligence, wit, and perception. Much too flattering, but it was very pleasing to hear it all. So Stuart, Emma, Marcus, Howard, and Jim, thank you all for giving your time and attention to this occasion. As some of you know, I first read Ruskin at university when I was 21, earnestly recommended to do so by my teacher at that time, Tony Tanner, author of that splendid book, Venice Desired, which some of you may know. But I don't think I've ever said to anyone what it was that Ruskin first called to my mind when I fell in love with him. During the Christmas vacation of 1966, I devoured Rosenberg's anthology, already referred to, with a passion that reminded me of myself at the age of 7, discovering the legendary figure of Robin Hood. It was first of all the sense that you can be smitten by objects of the imagination, and then that having imagined them, you want to draw them into your real life. The Robin Hood legend is about justice and the association of justice with courage and beauty. It was mostly a matter of simple association. Robin Hood loves the greenwood and lives close to nature and appears from time to time in Gothic churches. And what he most cares about is the exploitation of the poor, so much so that he robs the rich, in the language of economics, to redistribute the national wealth. Now, I'm not saying that Ruskin wants us to go around robbing anyone, but he does argue for redistribution. And like Dante, he thinks of the unjust acquisition of riches as a form of theft. As he says, a wonderful quote, "Whereas it has long been known and declared that the poor have no right to the property of the rich, I wish it also to be known and declared that the rich have no right to the property of the poor." Like the outlaw, Ruskin does not defer to convention in anything, from art to politics. Though we should also remember his rather startling claim to be, as he puts it, a violent Tory of the old school. And in this too, he may remind us of Robin Hood, with his ultimate loyalty to the king. My comparison is, of course, subjective. I'm only talking about my own feelings. But I very much hope both the Guild and the Ruskin Society of North America will keep up the spirit of rebellion within a larger sense of loyalty to society as an organism. The comparison with Robin Hood also reminds me of Ruskin's range and variety: Turner, landscape, geology, Gothic architecture, Italy, Switzerland, wealth and value, the just society, museology, literature, religion and mythology, botany and ornithology, gardening and the conservation of water, weather and cloud formations. I could go on and on. People sometimes ask me when I was Master of the Guild, which of these themes in Ruskin I most admired. I usually reply The fact that he thinks of all of them and links them all together. The Guild and the Ruskin Society must never become clubs devoted to just art or just political ideology. We must work to see the politics in art and the beauty in justice. We must not only appreciate, for instance, the heartbreaking loveliness of Ruskin's prose, for me, the most beautiful prose in our language. We must act on what is taught us in that prose. So thank you again for this honor and for your presence here today. I can't say how much it has meant to me, and I must be silent. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Clive. It is a great honor to have you with us today. As I said, you changed my life, all for the good. And we're so great. And Rachel Dickinson is with us. She's, of course, the current master of the Guild of St. George. Well, welcome, Rachel. It's so good to see you with us as well. It's been a lovely session. And now Sara and I and all the members of the board of the Ruskin Society of North America are honored, underscored in bold, circled with arrows pointing to it, are honored to give this year's Ruskin Lifetime Achievement Award to Clive Wilmer. And he does have the plaque, don't you, Clive? I think after all the mailing and all the trouble with getting it through customs, you do have the plaque. Okay. So you are now officially recognized as the third recipient of the Ruskin Society of North America. Thank you so much for all you've done.
Great. Great. Well, it reached you just in time. I'm so glad you had it for today.
I didn't hear you, Sara.
No, I just I'm glad it reached you in time so you could show it on camera.
Oh, yeah. I'm very proud of it. Thank you very much indeed. I'm very, very touched and proud.
Well,
yeah, well, we're very proud of you, and thank you for accepting the award. And we wish you well. We don't have anything else, I think, on our agenda, do we, Sara, for the rest of this program?
No, just to say again how really wonderful it is to see so many of you here and so many familiar faces. And again, I hope it won't be long before various of us and all of us are meeting in person.
Yeah, thrive on, everybody. Thrive on. Thank you to Marcus. Thank you to Emma. Thank you to Stu and Absentia. Thank you to Howard. Thank you to everybody who's participated in this. May you have wonderful days and hours, and have a wonderful evening. And if you've got some Domecq sherry, have a glass of it in celebration of Mr. Ruskin and our honoree tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Sara. Thank you,
Thank you, Clive.
Thank you, Katrina.
Yes, thank you, Katrina.
Yeah, thank you, Katrina.
And for your patience.
Nice. I mean, all this tech couldn't have been done without Katrina's wonderful work.
That is true. All right. Thank you very much.